Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Shannon Bowen to talk about landing your dream job. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with your superhero origin story. How did you get started working with nonprofits?
So, I've been in nonprofits for 20 years, leading development and communications teams. I'm a former C suite leader, in that space. But I really started to develop my business Monsoon Leadership about 2 years ago, helping people every step of the way through the job search process and negotiating a top salary because I was already doing that for my friends. And I was helping them bring in 30K plus in their salaries. And they were like, you have to teach other people how to do this. So that's when I developed my business, and I've helped over 40 clients land their dream jobs and with their dream salary. So it's been really rewarding. And most of my clients are in the nonprofit space because, nonprofit professionals have a hard time asking for money for themselves.
That's the truth. I'm curious to know, so your organization, your company is called Moonsoon. Where did you come up with that name?
Yeah, so
Moonsoon
monsoon leadership. So I actually grew
Monsoon.
up in Arizona in the desert. And so during the summer, it's really, really dry and hot. And then when the monsoons come, that's when the rain hits and all this new growth that's been lying dormant in the desert comes up. And that's what I do for my clients. I just ignite their innate strengths and help them perform in a job search and help them really understand, is this the right job for me? Is this the one that is going to serve me in my life right now, meet my financial goals, and help me get to where I want to go next? Because a lot of times people feel like they've made a mistake in the past and they didn't listen to their intuition, and then they got stuck in a toxic workplace or they accepted too low of a salary and they feel really stuck. So I really help people tune into their intuition and make a decision that feels right for them right now.
And I appreciate the correction. I know I'm not going to spell that or pronounce that name right. I want to say Moonsoon, but it's Monsoon, right? It is
Yeah,
Mon. Yeah.
that's
Okay.
okay.
Cool. I like that. And I love the analogy and the imagination, not the imagination, but the imagery is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about then landing your first job as a nonprofit. Imagine you have an individual who is looking for a career. They come across a nonprofit. It seems to be a great fit, and they start now wanting to move toward that. They move from like the for-profit world to the nonprofit world. What would be your top recommendations for someone like that? Just considerations, key factors, things to keep in mind.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of people are switching from the government sector and the corporate sector into nonprofits, right? And a lot of times people are choosing that nonprofit work because they want to have more purpose and meaning and impact in their career, which those are my people, right? It's not just a job. This is part of how you want to fuel your impact in the world, right? So I think that just like any other job, you really want to make sure this is the right culture fit for you. So, are you asking the right questions in the interview to make sure that this is the right culture for you? Are you highly collaborative? Are you more autonomous? You need to really dig into how you work and does this place work with your style? And then when we're talking about negotiating salary, I think there's this misconception that if you go to nonprofits, you can't make money. That is not true. Go look at people's 990s. You will see CEOs of top nonprofits are making lots of good money with big bonuses. Like there is money in nonprofits. Now it depends on the size of the nonprofit, the region, all of those things. But don't think that just because you go to nonprofit, you can't ask for the salary that you really want and need at this time of your life to meet your financial goals.
Yeah, it's a common misconception that nonprofit means no profit.
Right,
And
exactly.
so you mentioned that the fact that some people have challenges fighting for themselves and fighting for a proper salary. So how does that work in the nonprofit world? Like, what advice do you normally give to someone who has a certain expectation? Maybe they have a certain salary in the for-profit world, and they're looking for something equivalent or stronger in the nonprofit world. Like, how do you set their expectations and be able to set them up for success as they're starting a nonprofit?
Yeah, I think we'd have to really look at how much of their skills and experience from the corporate world is transferable, right? So I call this, are you making a soft pivot or a hard pivot, right? So if you're making a soft pivot, it's very transferable. You were doing communications for a corporate entity and now you're doing, communications for a nonprofit entity. That's a soft pivot, right? But if you've been doing IT for a tech company and then you want to start your fundraising career, that's a hard pivot. So when you're making a hard pivot, you got to kind of start a little farther back and you may be taking a pay cut to be able to start on a new path. But if you really feel like that career path is aligned to where you want to go, it might be worth it to make that sacrifice for a short amount of time to build the skills and experiences to then advance quickly in that new career path. But if you're just doing, a soft pivot, you can usually at least match your salary, if not increase it for a little bit.
So it is possible to move from a for-profit to a nonprofit and increase your salary. That this is something that is a reasonable expectation.
Yes, it all depends on the details. So, it's hard to generalize everything because everyone's skills and experience are differently, and also the jobs that they're looking for are different. So, a lot of what I work on with my clients is really strategizing their job search from the beginning to understand, are they applying for the right type of jobs? Because a lot of times people do a lot of spray and pray and just like, I'm going to apply for anything. I just want to get out of here. I hate this place. But that's actually not going to make you competitive in a job search. So, really honing in on what your skills and experience are, what your secret sauce of talents are, and then really do those jobs fit what you're looking for right now. That's going to make you more competitive. So it really kind of depends on the corporate individual of that little mix to see, is this the right fit? And can they move forward quickly through the process and secure the salary they're looking for?
And in the case of a soft pivot, which I would imagine off the top of my head is more popular than a hard pivot,
You'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
I think the pandemic opened up a lot of people's eyes. And there's something about this year in 2025 that people are like, I don't want to wait anymore. I want to work the career I've always wanted to, or open the business I've always wanted to. So there's a lot of people really committing to their dreams this year. So I'm seeing a lot of hard pivots out there, actually.
I love it. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
these nonprofits are your people. They're definitely my people as well.
Yeah.
People tend to get stuck here once they work with nonprofits. They don't want to work anywhere else or with anyone else. So I get
Hmm.
it, and I love then hearing that kind of story where others have realized this. That this is, if you don't love your job, then what are you doing? Like,
You can change your job. You
you can
can't change
change
your
your job.
family. That's a tough one. Sometimes it's hard to change where you live. That's a big move, but you can always change your job.
Okay. So in the case of a hard pivot then, or a soft pivot, you mentioned as well, you want to find an organization that fits your style. What does that mean? Because yes, a lot of nonprofits out there, but how would you help someone or guide someone to picking someone or picking an organization that is within their style?
Yeah. So a lot of what I work on in the beginning with my clients is identifying the type of culture they want to work in next and how they want to feel in their next job. And usually this is a reaction to maybe a not so great work environment they've been in, or, mistakes they feel like they've made in the past. But if you're a highly collaborative person, you probably don't want to be a team of one, right? Because that's going to be lonely and depressing, right? Or if you're a really detail oriented person or you really need a strategic plan, you want to have that structure and guiding, working for a startup nonprofit where they're just kind of all over the place making gut decisions is going to really stress you out, right? So knowing how you work and then knowing what questions to ask in the interviews to really get at how do these people work to see if it's the right fit. And because we spend so much time on this in coaching, my clients retain in their jobs because they found the right fit. But I think there's so much, like, we're not trained how to do interviews, so you don't even know what to ask, right? So it starts with, what do you want? And then how do you ask about that?
I used to interview people a lot back in the day for IT jobs. And
Mm.
one of the things I looked for is the amount of knowledge that the candidate had about the organization that I was working with. So one of the best questions that I found, the easiest to can question, is when they would ask me why I like working at the organization. And I think that is a great question to ask because not only does it provides at least a great or possibility of a great idea of what the culture is like. Because if I love X, Y, or Z about a particular organization, maybe they will too. And it's kind of like an
Hmm.
insider information about, what you're actually, how the actual day-to-day life works. Would you recommend that as a question to ask in terms of trying
Yeah,
to
I
figure
think it's
out?
always great to ask, what do you like about working here? Describe the culture. Those are kind of like softball ones.
Hmm.
So, some other ones that go a little bit deeper. So, say you've been in an organization where nobody used their PTO and you were actually shamed to use your PTO. So, you never took vacations, you got super burnt out. A lot of clients come to me with this situation. I'll say, say you're sitting down in one of those panel interviews, either on Zoom or in person, and you can just, you're just chit chatting before, and you can just say, when was everybody's last vacation and where did you go? And you'll know right away if someone's like, ugh, vacation, what's that? We don't do that. Or, oh my God, I just got back from 2 weeks in Spain and, it was so nice to just unplug, and you learn a lot because in interviews, sometimes people aren't super honest about the culture because, their boss is in the room, they're trying to perform well. They really need this position filled because, oh my gosh, they're doing two jobs. So you kind of have to ask some creative questions to really get at what is actually going on in that organization. So that's just kind of a softball, easy one, but you learn a lot about people's culture and towards taking vacation time.
So in addition to salary, people can obviously negotiate benefits, but I think that is something that people tend to neglect. They focus on a dollar value as opposed to some of the benefits. In the nonprofit world, what are some of the common benefits that you try advocating for that I guess you call them students that you would that you help
Yeah, I call them my
clients?
clients. Yeah.
Clients, okay.
So there's a whole bunch of things you can negotiate at the verbal offer stage. So salary, of course, is one of them. You can also negotiate a bonus structure. So especially if you're director of above, you should be at least asking about a bonus structure, signing bonus, performance bonus, retention bonus. These are all bonuses that you should at least start the conversation about and get written into your offer letter because that is also motivation for you to stay. PTO is absolutely something that you want to negotiate for. Most of my clients are very good at getting their previous PTO matched. That's an easy gift to give. It's very common to get that to happen. It is a financial line item for nonprofits. It's actually on their balance sheet as a liability. It's a financial benefit, so you want to ask for that. You can also ask for a higher percentage on the 403B match. Sometimes that one's a little tricky because there's equity in the organization, but you can always ask about it. You can also ask about having a flexible work schedule, your work from home days. If you need a kind of funky schedule, maybe you're doing some caregiving or something, you want to get all of that in writing up front then as well. So you really want to kind of ask about the whole package together because this is what comes together to actually form what your job will be. And your verbal offer is the most powerful moment you have the entire time you're there at that job. So you want to use that to have a collaborative conversation and get the offer that you really want. So when you walk in day one, you feel valued and ready to go.
Yeah, I imagine it's easier to negotiate on day one rather than on day 30 because now
Oh, yeah.
they know that there's, you're kind of ingrained in the, so is there any, because I believe, and I've heard this before, where certain organizations will say, well, let's just, do a trial period for a certain amount. We'll give you a, reduced salary and benefits. And then if it works out, then we'll increase you to normal. I don't know if that happens often in the nonprofit world. It happened before I worked in nonprofits. And if that does happen, what would you recommend to your client?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen. And I say get it in writing because a lot of times people will promise things at the verbal offer stage, but if it's not in writing, you cannot go back to it. And this has happened to people where they've been promised, okay, we're going to start you at this salary. We're going to give you a raise in 6 months or a year. Guess what? That whole leadership team is gone. There's nothing in writing and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't exist. So you have to get that in writing in your offer letter. And that's your backup, right? To go back and say, hey, I was actually promised that, after a year, we would discuss a bonus structure, right? And so having that time to go back and forth in the offer letter and make sure that you have everything in there that you need and save it in a place you can find because you may need to go back to it. You just don't know how much will change in a year. And everything that's happening in nonprofits right now, you got to have everything written down and backed up.
Unfortunately, even in this day and age, women and people of color don't always receive the same salaries or benefits as typical white males. I hope I have the sensation that it's less common in the nonprofit world than the for-profit world, but it's still there. And I'm curious to know
It's
if
still in the nonprofit world too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though there's
Any
hardly any male
recommendations?
fundraisers, they still make more money than all the female ones. So,
World. Any recommendations or tips for individuals that fall into those categories that make sure that they get their real value and their real worth?
Absolutely. So I do a lot of training of women. I just spoke yesterday at a women's leadership conference on this because, we as women are very socialized to accept less and to not negotiate. And people think that negotiation is like an argument or adversarial, and it's not. It's a collaborative conversation that you're working together to solve a problem. And most people, when they make a first offer, they expect to have some conversation. I mean, I've even had hiring managers whisper to me, I can't believe they took that low offer, and a lot of times it's women or BIPOC individuals that are taking that low offer because they don't feel the socialization is just take what's given to you, don't ask for more. And I say that's just total BS. And, if you learn the strategy, the skills, and the scripts to say, and really the confidence and the belief in your own value. What I tell my clients is I want to find a job that is deserving of your talent, right? Not that you deserve, it's deserving of you. And so if you walk in fully confident in your value, it's a lot easier to negotiate for the number that you deserve at this point in your life. And so, but it absolutely, the white men don't need as much work on this. Let's just put it that way. So that's not where I focus my training on.
It's always easier to negotiate when you're in a position of strength. If you have a job already and now you're looking for another job, you can you have more power to be able to decline an offer. But if you're hungry, right? Beggars can't be choosers, so to speak. When you are offered a job, you might be inclined to say just take it as it is because you just need to pay the bills and you're struggling. So, is there any recommendations you give to people to say, hang on a second, even though you're hungry, hang on, you do deserve more. Let's fight for at least one increase. Like, how does that conversation happen or unfold?
Yeah. So a phrase I say a lot in my coaching is I want you to be picky, be expensive, and be brilliant. So being picky is a privilege, right? So if you've been out of work a long time, job searches are taking longer right now. It's a funky market. It's flooded with all of the government individuals who've been laid off. So it is a little bit of a longer process right now. So a lot of times when I talk to clients who maybe their unemployment's run out, they've been in a job search a long time, we spend time talking about, is there temporary work that you can take on right now? Even a temp agency or consulting or something that helps bridge that gap so that you can still be picky. Because if you're working with me, I'm not here to just get you any job. I want to get you an ideal job because I've seen the emotional and financial toll it takes on people when they say yes to a job that is a bad offer, because that sets you behind in your salary. And then it's such a bigger jump to catch up. And it's a lot harder to do a 50K increase in jobs than it is a 20 to 30K increase, right? So I really want to help people. How can you find that temporary funds so you can afford your life? Because money is real. I'm not going to be pie in the sky about it. Money is real. You got to afford your life. I don't want you to get into a debt hole. But I also don't want you to accept a bad offer in a bad workplace that's actually going to cause more harm to your long-term career.
Hey, Alex here. I want to take a brief moment and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode so far, please consider sharing it with someone who would also benefit from its insights. It's these kinds of referrals that really help the show grow. You can also show your support by making a small donation. I don't do corporate sponsorships or product placements, so I rely on your support to keep the show going. You can visit my website, agentsofnonprofit.com, and click Support Us in the top menu. Thank you kindly.
So you mentioned 3 points: picky, expensive, and brilliant. That's picky. What do you mean by expensive and brilliant? Can you spend a bit of time, defining what those mean to you?
Yeah. So expensive is you should aim for the top of the range, right? So if you're coming to me, we're fueling that top of the range energy, right? We're not going to accept the bargain basement price that they're going to offer you first, right? We are going to stand in our value, use our strategy and skills to negotiate for the best offer for you right now in your life, right? And I just want, especially with nonprofit folks, I want people to really embody being expensive, like you have worked for decades. Your skills and talents are valuable, right? Don't undersell what you've been building and that you can walk into this job day one and knock it out of the park. So be expensive. And then be brilliant is so many people hide their strengths, downplay their value and their success, or, we all worked on that. Okay, but you led this part. So, let yourself be brilliant, let yourself be talented and shine and show what you're really good at. Don't hide behind generic language or, bland LinkedIn profiles, because guess what? That's one of the reasons you're not being competitive and getting the job, is because they don't have a sense of who you are specifically. So I do a lot of assessments. I do these custom AI reports for clients so that they can actually see their strengths mirrored back to them. And they can really stand in their brilliance and be like, I am really good at this. And that really helps for them to be more specific in interviews. And the hiring manager is like, yes, I want that specific strength on my team, and I'm going to hire them for the top dollar.
The expensive part, I think it's, to your point, knowing your worth. But you also have to know how to find your worth. Like, how do you? I know some or most positions in nonprofits, their salary is public. Is it a matter of just collecting that data and looking through it and saying, okay, based on the particular organization and position, I expect to receive this much, or is there some kind of other mechanism to find out, what your actually range is for a particular position?
Yeah, so I always talk about curating your career. So you need to be keeping an eye on the ecosystem of your job title. So maybe you're a major gift officer. So I would say always be getting those job announcements. Don't stop the newsletters with the job announcements. Keep an eye on them, because you need to know if you've gotten behind in salary, right? Because maybe you've been stagnant at a place, they haven't been offering salaries, and then you start to see in job announcements, oh my God, I'm like 20, 30K behind what the mid-range has become for this position. No one's going to tell that for you. You have to keep an eye on that, and you have to track that so you know what to ask for, right? Or sometimes, in nonprofits, we love to come up with new titles, right? So if your title has become kind of stale or outdated, that's something you need to advocate to update, right? And so I really believe in keeping an eye on the ecosystem, curating your career, and always being ready, because you never know when that perfect job opportunity is going to come up, and you want to be ready for it.
I totally agree. The brilliant part, yeah, people definitely have a hard time selling themselves. I generally advise people to be very specific, to be as specialized as possible, and indicate, to pick a lane. You can't be everything. You can't solve everyone's problems. So knowing what you're good at and what your strengths are, and then really advocating and pushing for them. And as well as if you can complement them with actual numbers, like, increased by this percentage, decrease that by that percentage, or, this much raised. I find these to be very strong and powerful in messaging. Would you agree? You have other things you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I recommend adding success stats to your resume, and then also memorizing them. So the hardest question in interviews is, tell me about your career and why you're interested to apply for this position. Especially if you've been working for 20 years, you're like, okay, buckle up. I got about 2 hours to talk about it. No, you have about 5 to 7 minutes. So you have to figure out, what are those success stories to hit? How can you sprinkle in those statistics? That sounds natural, right? So I spend a lot of time with my clients rehearsing this question, and you're absolutely right. So those success statistics that are in your resume, you want to sprinkle them in your interview, you want to sprinkle them in your cover letter, and even on your LinkedIn, right? So you want to make sure that you're hitting all of those storytelling elements of the interview process.
This is maybe off the record, but a really interesting question. Let's say you only have a handful of success stories, success metrics. Would you use the same one in all three through all channels, or would you sprinkle different ones in different channels?
That's actually a really good question. I would say across all channels, because, okay, so when you apply for a job, you submit your cover letter and your resume, and then of course there's always your LinkedIn. You actually don't know what the hiring manager or those interview panels are looking at. Some people look at all three. Some people only looked at your LinkedIn. Some people only looked at your resume. So you can't assume that everybody's read all three. So you need to have some commonality of your greatest hits need to be across all three, right? And then you have the people that show up for the interview that haven't read anything. So then you need to say it verbally in the interview. So your shining statistics, you have to make sure that people hear and remember. So I would say across all of them, and then you're going to have some variation of style, obviously, because they're different types of communication vehicles. But your greatest hits, put them in all of them.
Let's fast forward a few years. Let's imagine they land their dream job. They're happy there for a few years as an executive. But then something happens. Either the organization starts, or they move away from the organization for whatever reason. And now they're not as motivated as they once were, at least they were on day one. I know some executives, a lot of executives will probably be faithful to the organization, but again, that the style or the culture has not been a good fit for a bit, and then now considering to make a shift. Is this a normal situation? What do you normally advise in these kinds of situations? Is it stick it out, try to change it from the inside, or influence it from the inside, or start looking for something else because it's probably time or a sign that it's time to move on?
Well, it kind of depends. So we'd have to have a conversation and dig into it of, has this become untenable? Is there a new leader in charge that their style does not fit with yours? Is it openly toxic and unsafe at this organization for you? Do the way that they are leading actually in opposition to your values? Those things are things that you need to really listen to, right? Because you are the only one who's in charge of your own integrity, right? And if you feel like you're in a job that is eating away at your own integrity, it's like, well, you want to find a job that fits that and aligns with your values and creates purpose and meaning in your life, right? We don't go into nonprofits just to work a job and go home. We are fueled by purpose and meaning. And so in that situation, I would say, okay, it's time to start looking for a new job that better aligns with who you are right now. And because you might have changed, right? When you took this job, maybe you had a different, life makeup and different, priorities, and you might have changed. Now, sometimes when I have clients, it's like, okay, do you just want to get out of this because you worked yourself to the ground and you burnt yourself out? And in that case, I'm like, okay, we need to do coaching to change your relationship to work, because you're just going to go into a new job and do the same thing again, right? So sometimes we need to work on behavior change to change how you approach work, how you approach your relationships at work, so you don't just copy the same behaviors in the new place and have the same outcome, right? Because that's demoralizing. So it kind of depends on the situation.
So you mentioned that I love the fact that you mentioned that coaching the person to make sure that their relationship with a job is healthy and successful. Because you're right, I think that's a big part of it. If you're troubled personally, for example, whether you're at job A or job B, you're still going to be troubled personally. So there's going to be some self-discovery, some reflection to be able to make sure that you're in a good place before you start looking elsewhere. Let's though talk about this scenario where that's done. You're in a good shape, but you're still not feeling the love anymore at your current organization. What are some major either challenges or considerations when you start job hunting? Because some people, for example, don't even want to advertise that they're looking for a new job on a website because they don't want their current employer to find out that they're actually looking for a job. But how does that work in the nonprofit space?
Absolutely. So you don't want your current employer to know that you're looking, right? So you can quietly update your LinkedIn without putting your open to work, headline on there. So you can do things to be ready quietly so people at your current job don't know that you're looking, right? Now, I know that a lot of your audience is executives, so they're usually working with recruiters, which is a highly confidential and private process because of this very reason, right? Leadership roles are a small little world in each region. So, there is a lot of confidentiality and privacy that goes into that. I think also just, being really strategic about what roles you're applying for, it is sometimes is difficult if you're having a private job search and then you apply to your main competitor of your current organization, and maybe you have to sit at like collaborative tables every week, on a shared grant or something. That might be a little too close for comfort. So, we need to think about, how do you balance what do you want next in that next step with the safety and privacy of being able to keep your current job while you're looking.
I can imagine that if you're an executive working with an organization for a long period of time, the feeling of leaving it would either be, you're abandoning it, you're leaving a relationship, right? It's like almost any other relationship where you've been a partner for so long. There could even be an identity crisis of some kind. How do you help navigate those kinds of waters?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of identity crisis that happens. It doesn't have to just be executives. I think that work takes up a really big part of our lives. And it's the main place that we get to realize our talents. You spend all this time on education, skill building. Where do you use that? You use it at work, right? So, and if you've been at an organization a long time, you also have that sunk cost. So it is really difficult. I do get clients that have been at a place 10 plus years, and it is a process to leave, right? So I think it's about addressing that relationship to work and really standing in, does this job serve you right now? Usually, if you've come to me, you know that it isn't for various reasons. Maybe it's not emotionally safe anymore. Maybe the workload is too intense and it's affecting your physical health. Or maybe you just know you are like 40K behind your peers in salary and there's no room for growth here. You've tried and it hasn't worked. And you are trying to buy a house or start a family and you really need to increase that income. Whatever the reason, I think, through coaching, we can work on, who are you as an individual and what do you need in your life? And how does this job serve or not serve you? Instead of, I'm here to serve my job forever, right? So there is a little bit of a reframing that happens to be able to start to put that emotional distance to feel okay about leaving.
So on your website, the one of the big things you offer is this dream job coaching process or process, depending on what country you're from. I'm curious to know. I'm Canadian.
I love it. I love it.
Can you walk us through that? What is that process? High level, what does it look like? What can people expect to, how you work with them and how you help people find their dream job?
Absolutely. So we work through every step of the job process. So the first step is we work on career exploration. So I have this very in-depth survey where we start to identify what you really want in your next job, what keywords you want to search for. But we also start talking about salary and benefits right away because we're going to normalize talking about that through the entire process. So by the time you get to salary negotiation, it feels natural and normal and not this like big thing you're dreading, which is how most people feel. So we start with that at the beginning. We start talking about what culture you're looking for because we're starting to prep for interviews and what do you need to ask to know that this is the right fit for you, right? Then we go into your materials review. So I give everybody my dream job power pack with all my resume, cover letter, LinkedIn checklists. They send me their resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn. We go over it. We strategize their story depending on the soft or hard pivot, right? So how much do we need to be telling a story of transferable skills? Are you sharing your secret sauce of talents in your approach to attract the right job and be competitive in the process? Then we go into interview prep. My favorite. I love doing interview prep. I hit record. People get real nervous. We work through it. We practice. We give feedback and improve. And then we do salary negotiation. And that is, I walk them through their offer and the counter offer. And then we get to celebrate together, which is the best part. And throughout the process, I have these custom reports. So actually, after the career exploration survey, I have a career clarity report. So inputs are the AI notes from our coaching sessions, that career exploration survey. My clients send me 3 job descriptions in their resume, and I have this beautiful custom report that tells them their strengths and what they're looking for, what keywords to be putting in their LinkedIn and in their resume. And it really helps them stand in their brilliance, going back to be brilliant, and really get that clarity of their path. And then at the end, we now have a 90-day support plan. So because as my client so wisely said, just when you get the job doesn't mean the story ends, right? And so now you get another custom report that identifies your strengths, your challenges, your opportunities, and your triggers. So you know exactly how to continue that behavior change at work, right? We're not going to go in there, say yes to every project, burn ourselves out, and have to leave again in 2 years, which hello is like a lot of nonprofit folks, right? So how do we learn how to set healthy boundaries, slow our roll so we have a more sustainable workload? So with that, you get that custom report, and then we have 3 months of group coaching with that, with like-minded individuals so that you can really be the person you want to be in your next job.
I love mock interviews because to me, the more you do, the more comfortable you become when you actually have the interview. And it's the same way when you do public speaking. Right? I've learned by taking speaking courses or public speaking courses is that it's all about rehearsal. If you rehearse something, a dozen times, by the time you actually do the speech, it'll become so natural, so effortless for you that it's just, one more of many times. So I do appreciate that you do these mock interviews to help get people more comfortable and they become less nervous and just agree to everything on the spot.
It is so powerful to watch people improve. And they get to own their story because, okay, here's the thing about interviews. they're going to trigger weird past workplace trauma. Like it'll be a benign question like, what are you looking for in your next manager? And then it's like, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, let's unpack that. Let's practice that. Let's not be like, oh, I hope you're not like this terrible person I worked with, right? And this is just natural. But through the practice, you actually kind of heal from that and start to own your story in a new way. And you walk in confident and strong and clear. And I love getting emails and texts from my clients that say, that was the best I've ever interviewed. I felt totally like my authentic self. And that's what I want, because as a hiring manager, that's who you want to hire. And I've hired so many teams, built so many, and it's like I always gravitated towards the person who showed up as their authentic self, because you can trust. It's a trust building exercise, hiring. So you can trust that that is the person they say they are, and I know how they're going to show up on this team, right? So I love interview practice. It's my favorite part.
I'm curious to know, what do you believe is the most important thing that people miss or lack or need the most instruction on when you are doing these kinds of coaching? Is it usually at the beginning, the middle, the end of their career, or something completely different? What is the one thing that you find yourself time and time again saying, well, this seems to be a really big learning curve for most people?
I mean, it's definitely all parts of it. I'm not going to lie. But I think interview skills is probably the area that people need to improve the most. I would say salary negotiation is a close second. Most people come to me, they've never negotiated their salary, And so, okay, we're going to do it for the first time together. So there's that. But interview skills, everybody needs to improve, because even sometimes when people think, oh, I'm a really good interviewer, and it's like, okay, but there was no specificity in that answer. Or actually, you kind of highlighted this part, and so it comes across as this and not exactly what you're thinking. It does. And we record it. And so then my clients go back and listen to it, and they're like, oh my God, you're so right. I had no idea. Because how often are you recording yourself and watching yourself, right? It's kind of a painful process. So unless you have a coach making you do it, you're probably not going to do that, right? So it really helps to be able to see how clearly you're telling your story. So I think interview skills are the number one thing that people need to improve.
Recording is extremely powerful. In that, I took a night course on presentation skills, and that was like the key element is they recorded every single time you did a presentation, and you are always your worst critic. So to be able to see yourself, and if you fidget or if you say things or repeat things, you catch on to these things really quickly when you're watching yourself, as opposed to being and doing the thing you're doing. So yeah, recording, awesome. I think it's awesome, and thank you for doing that.
It's interesting because we do the recorded session, they listen to it. And then a lot of times my clients, they'll do more video recordings and send them to me for feedback. And it's like, wow, we got over the hurdle of recording and watching ourselves, and they just get so much better each time. And I'm just smiling with pride, because I'm like, look at how you are owning your story and walking in with specificity. And I want to hire you, and that's why they get the job they want.
Leading into the superhero theme of the podcast, I'm curious to know, if you had a magic wand or a superpower, what would be one thing you would change in the career development space?
What I would love is that everybody in nonprofits feels like they are in the right place, doing the right work with the right people. I think there's a lot of toxic work culture in nonprofits. The dark side of the mission-driven, purpose and meaning is overinvestment, and it comes at a cost, right? We know about burnout, the health impacts, but also sometimes people come to me with just the lost time. They never developed a hobby. They never took that vacation. And, we only have our health for so long, and we never know when we're going to lose it. And you don't want to look back and regret. So how can I help people find the right job for them right now, so that they don't land in a toxic situation that they could have seen in the interview process? Because every single person, when you ask, did you have a red flag in the interview? And, it's a very toxic situation that they're in, they will always say yes. So how do you tune into your intuition and trust your decision-making ability to choose the right job for you? So my hope is that everybody is in the right place for them right now. And that is the first step towards working towards a positive work culture together, right? And so that's what I would love. And of course, I want everybody to be paid more. So, Just everybody paid more would be great.
I'll play devil's advocate for a second, though. Is the thing about being paid more is that there's always a adjustment period, and then it's a plateau again, right? So your expectations of life and your lifestyle will adjust because I get extra more dollars, but then it plateaus again, and then it becomes your new normal. And I guess you normalize it. So yes, I agree that people need to be paid their fair share, and of course their worth and their value. But just being paid more doesn't always lead to greater happiness.
It doesn't. It's really about alignment. And I even have clients who take pay cuts and they're so much happier.
Oh yeah. I've seen that too.
It's not always about more money. It's like, is it the right money? Is it the right money that funds your life, funds your savings? If you're working with me, I don't want you, getting behind in retirement. We're doing the whole package. You're getting paid well, you're saving, you're retiring, and you're having time for your life, right? Do you need a 35-hour work week? Things like that. Like, we need to really dig into what is your life right now and what are the needs and how does this job serve your life's needs, right? Not like what job will hire you, but it's like, does this fit your life? Because I think if we work towards our jobs actually working for us, we won't put so much pressure on it to be our everything. It's not, it's just a job. You have a full life that can, fuel your talents, your creativity, your joy, your relaxation. Job is just a job. So let's get that to work for you so you can enjoy the rest of your life.
I also like asking the question about AI, how AI influences either career development or careers or the future of careers. I'm curious to know any thoughts you have about AI and how it impacts this space.
Well, we're in the midst of it right now. So, not so much in the nonprofit sector, but in others, AI is replacing jobs. So that's happening in communications jobs and advertising and things like that. It probably, nonprofits are usually a little bit behind. So that probably will come in. But AI has definitely influenced the job search process. So there's the ATS scanners that scan resumes. So, for certain types of jobs, big organizations that are using those AI scanners, you need to make sure that you're compliant. And then I do recommend using AI. So if you're looking at a job description, feed that through chat GPT and look for the keywords and make sure that you have those keywords in your resume and cover letter, right? Because it's a matchmaking exercise at the beginning with your materials. So help, use the robot to help you do that matchmaking, right? And then personally in my business, I'm using AI, this really custom private API reports to synthesize the themes of my clients so that they can see themselves, right? It's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame. So I really see AI as this powerful tool to actually help us pull out the themes of our growth, our strengths, what we actually want right now in our lives. So I think that AI has, it is influencing the job search process, but it's also helping us see our own strengths in a way that doesn't feel so blurry and overwhelming.
Shannon, this has been great. For people who are interested in landing their dream job, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn, so you can always DM me on LinkedIn. I also have my website, so monsoonleadership.com/dreamjob is my whole process there. I have a free 30-minute discovery call. We can jump on, talk through your unique situation, and build a strategy together. So those would be the best ways. But I definitely hope that if you listen to this podcast and you liked it, please DM me on LinkedIn because that's the best, because you don't get that face-to-face interaction through a podcast, but I love it when I get messages. It's so nice to hear.
I totally agree. Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.